Hello and welcome to the OMFIF podcast. I'm Arunima Sharan, Senior Economist at OMFIF, and today I'm joined by Rosanna Costa, Governor of Banco Central de Chile. We will be discussing gender parity and diversity in leadership positions across financial institutions, especially central banks. And Governor Costa, we're grateful to have you and your perspective on the topic today as the first woman to be the governor at Banco Central de Chile, which was the top-ranked central bank in OMFIF's most recent Gender Balance Index. Thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you with us today, Governor.
It's a pleasure for me too to have this conversation with you, with the people who is going to join us by the podcast.
Yeah. To set the stage a little bit, my first question to you is, why does this matter? So why does diversity and inclusion in leadership positions, especially in central banks and financial institutions, why does that matter? Why is this a topic we should be paying attention to?
I believe that our society needs to aim for greater gender equity by promoting and enabling women's development beyond cultural constraints, acknowledging their wishes and their aspirations. This is about opening and widening spaces. Women can develop themselves freely and feel fulfilled professionally and personally. We must inspire women to pursue careers in areas that initially and mostly appear more distant, such as finance, macroeconomics, for example. In every path a woman takes, there are cultural and motivational patterns. The former can be modified, the latter must be respected. Inspiring women and not forcing them is the appropriate way to achieve these goals. In the end, closing the gap must contribute to a fairer society and a more prosperous one. After that, from an economic standpoint, the value of closing the gaps between men and women is important. Let me quote here a paragraph from the OECD report, whose name is Joining Forces and Gender Equality, which says, addressing gender inequalities is not only a matter of intrinsic value and moral imperative, it can also enhance the growth, productivity, competitiveness, and sustainability of economies. Beyond the benefits, both sides introducing diverse perspectives contributes to reach better decisions inside organizations. So there is some evidence that banks with higher share of women on board have higher capital buffers, a lower proportion of non-performing loans, a greater resistance to stress. What can explain these findings? I'm not sure. Literature suggests that the observed higher stability is most like due to greater diversity of views on board, as well as non-discriminatory hiring practices that lead to unbiased hiring of the most qualified or experienced. The real point is that we need the best without unconscious exclusion.
No, thank you. The case for diversity perhaps is clear to have greater diversity, but what do you see as some of the main barriers in achieving this, maybe in senior leadership positions specifically?
There are many barriers. First, the effect of motherhood on career development and labor participation, for example. Both have been extensively reviewed in the literature. In fact, Claudia Goldin, awarded in 2023 with the Nobel Memorial Prize in Economic Science, in her research on gender wage gap in over 200 years of American history, has found the most of the difference in earnings for the same jobs that occurs today is triggered by the birth of the first child. So this is the first. Evidence also suggests that the career interruption has cost in terms of future development, as it may mean delaying or missing out on promotion and other professional opportunities. So there is a long-term cost if women temporarily withdraw the labor market, for example, to raise their children. Women face barriers and impediments in their professional careers, not because of lack of preparation and capabilities, but sometimes because of institutional structure itself. Some examples of these are the absence of policies for reconciling work and family life, or it is not possible in some occasions. Sometimes it can be affected because of a less friendly women organizational culture, a higher representation of women on boards can help to promote a change inside organizations. We must also consider women's need for self-confidence. This leads me to recall what Ana Botín, in one opportunity, speaking with us in the Central Bank of Chile, she is the president of Banco Santander, once stated, observing that it is common for a woman to apply for a higher position recently when she is 120% qualified for it versus a man that can be less qualified and applies believing he can raise up to the challenge once in the position. Linked to this, we have studied in our country, in Chile, and the study tells us that an important part of the wage gap between men and women is explained by the pay policies of companies, but these emerge mainly from wage between or among companies, not inside companies.
Okay.
There is many barriers we can study. We have to develop or to study more on that.
Yeah. Going a little bit deeper into the Chilean context and specifically for Banco Central de Chile, you mentioned the institutional structure, some policies that can be barriers, but in our 2024 Gender Balance Index, the central bank was the top ranked central bank, and I know you have some policies that have been implemented to promote gender equality. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about the specific policies or programs that you have at Banco Central de Chile to promote gender parity and to promote kind of women's representation in leadership positions.
At the Central Bank of Chile, we have defined 3 areas to work on: recruitment, organizational culture, and inspiring. First, we have incorporated gender balance practices in the recruitment process, including competitive women candidates in management positions selection processes. On the other hand, we have a quota of 50% female representation in internship programs, allowing us to boost the number of women entering the bank at that level. And this has contributed to increasing the incorporation of women economists among young people's admissions. Second, we have permanently integrated diversity, inclusion, and gender issues in the training of all bank employees. One example is that we have raised awareness of and made concrete and increasing efforts to limit and finally eliminate microsexism or unconscious bias in my language in our institution. We have leadership training and a permanent focus in diversity and unconscious bias. And third, we have coaching programs for women to encourage them to assume positions of responsibility throughout their careers, considering motherhood periods, especially when their children are young, to the extent possible. There is a barrier at that stage, and we must support mothers by giving them confidence and flexibility whenever possible.
Yes.
However, we also found that there is a need to promote women participation in economy and finance. We face the problematic reality that there is a smaller proportion of women economists, particularly in the fields of macroeconomic and finance. So every year, we organized an event to showcase role models and examples of women-led leadership. In the same event, we try to encourage and inspire female students by explaining what the bank is all about regarding its mission and role in the society. There is a misconception that economics and finance are distant disciplines and are detached from people and their daily lives, which is not true. Let me share with you some other initiatives in our strategic plan 2023 to 2027. In conferences and in panels on research and economic policy, we foster the participation of both women and men. In Chile, women are at least a third of total participants. We try to provide more data to those who design public policies and nurture the public debate. In this light, the Central Bank of Chile has gathered gender statistics produced in our country, has made efforts to make them known, and made them available to the public in a dedicated space in our website. We also contribute occasionally with research and analysis in this area. This can serve as a source of reference of academics, policymakers, and the general public. And as I mentioned before, we have leadership training including these topics. Last but not least, we are working to have more women in STEM areas. This is done through mentoring college talents with a focus on finance, economics, and data science, led by bank professionals who are linked as a role model and bring the bank's work closer to the academy. All of these initiatives have yield results. For example, the percentage of women hired by the bank in economic areas at the end of 2019 was 23%. And we brought it to 36% by the end of 2023.
No, that's a lot of initiatives, and the breadth and depth of them sounds very inspiring, and leads me to my next question of, are there specific ways, or how does the bank measure and track progress on these, diversity, inclusion, and equality initiatives?
Well, we don't have a specific quantitative goal. Instead, we have focused more on process and organizational culture, forcing the presence of women into the short list of applicants, working culture, and so on. One way to evaluate ourselves is through positions achieved, for example, in various rankings that compare companies in our country, in dimensions associated with these issues. For example, we obtained second place in Great Place to Work Women 2023 ranking in our country, in the medium-sized category of organization. In the Great Place to Work indicator, the bank has systematically obtained very equitable overall average between men and women, with difference always less than 2 percentage points. This is one of the main characteristics that prove that we have minimized gender bias. In our own climate surveys, we have questions related to gender equity and diversity. We positively value having achieved an overall climate index above 80% for at least the last 3 years, with similar results for both genders. And in addition, on some specific questions related to work-life harmony, the hiring process, employee benefits, and fair treatment irrespective of gender or sexual orientation, we had very high scores last year, and again, similar between men and women.
And in your view, given the good work that the central bank is doing in this area, what is the role of what should the role be of central banks in promoting such DE&I initiatives across the wider financial industry?
Well, the Central Bank of Chile is an autonomous institution. So we are not involved in public policy, and we don't have the power to put this issue in every corner of the society.
Yeah.
But at the bank, we are committed to attracting top talent. And if we do not include women, we could be missing a large part of our organization's talent and excellence. We, women, are an integral complement that enhances the strategic view and analysis. And we feel driven to set the best example and implement measures accordingly towards major representativeness and inclusiveness. However, the central bank had great professionals, some of whom have become ministers or have moved on to other relevant positions in the private and the public sector. So they end up contributing to the country from different functions. By integrating women into our workspace, I'm sure that we will be contributing to the country in an area that is very elusive to us professionals. So we can provide women professionals an example of practice.
Yeah. So to play a little bit of a devil's advocate, sometimes a common criticism of policies that encourage gender equality or diversity and inclusion is that they're not meritocratic. So what would you say to someone who has this criticism?
Today, we still need to promote inclusion and diversity in order to tap into the untapped talent and potential of all. There is still a gap, but I agree that the quest to close it should not affect the total productivity of a company or institution. So we should always choose the best. If women or minorities can deploy their full potential and talent, and they are the best, this will benefit first and foremost their direct work environment, and then society as a whole. That is why we must be wholesomely ambitious and strive for some diversity, equity, and inclusion every day. At the same time, organization must be productive. Everyone must be involved in the selection of the best people, taking care not to exclude anyone. To this end, it is important to establish hiring requirements that encourage a thorough search for the best people for the position, abandoning the prior biases that some professions come with or other aspects that may put someone perfectly competent off the list. The objective, so, is to remove veils, not to trade one bias for another. It is very important to include men in the challenge because we are eliminating bias, no changing again one bias for another or replacing one discrimination with another. This is about correcting biases and leveling the playing field, which is not yet balanced.
No. And in terms of eliminating the biases and, being fair, do you think there's a role for political will or the culture generally in society that influences gender balance in the financial sector specifically?
Precisely when our studies talk about gaps, the main thing is to analyze them to find the reasons and correct the distortions. Just to mention some of the lessons learned from the literature: greater access of women to education, better design of public policies, cultural changes in gender roles in the direction of greater perception of equality in labor skills, among others. We, the central bank, can serve the society through different channels. The availability of good statistics. As I said, the Central Bank of Chile currently gathers and publishes gender statistics and data that make the situation of women visible and measurable, which provides more information to those who design public policies and nurture the public debate. To have better answers within the profession of economists, women and men could be able to do more research on the subject, considering the bank's scope of action. For example, studying the gaps in the access to financial market, better understanding labor difference in women and men careers, the practice, building and living an unbiased and inclusive institution. So three lines, three channels.
Mhm. Definitely. To shift the topic slightly, I had a couple of questions about your own experience. As you mentioned in the introduction, you were the first woman to be the governor of the Central Bank of Chile. How would you describe your personal experience in breaking through this glass ceiling?
It is always more difficult to speak about ourselves. My professional life has been marked by participating in environments where female representation has been quite absent,
Mhm.
to say the least, and in positions that women have rarely or never held, where the gender gaps were much more significant and less visible at the same time. At each stage, I have encountered different challenges. For example, in my early days, every time I went into a men's meeting, I felt the discomfort that they had to behave differently in front of a woman in this moment.
Mhm.
I learned to handle it without giving up on myself. But even when this experience applies in such moments, I believe both parties have to accept and adapt to each other in this challenge as in others, but no losing our essence. It has entailed the responsibility of being the first woman, in an important position, literally the only woman at the table, which has meant unlocking doors and leaving them open for other women. This was a meaningful experience for me, and I have strived to participate professionally in a spirit of collaboration, aware of these issues, and in the knowledge that individual contribution to the collective outcome matters significantly. While I sincerely welcome the progress and changes in terms of parity, the fact is that there are still major challenges ahead in terms of women's leadership and equal gender opportunities, not necessarily the same challenges. Yet, I have witnessed that change flows better when there are more women at all levels rather than, for example, just a single woman sitting on a board. A single woman, even in a high position, still has a marginal impact. In contrast, a larger number of women generate exponential change. And I see this change occurring more naturally in younger people. I also recognize that I had to fight with my personal prejudice and guilty. It was tough and took me many years to accept that while I was working, I was not at fault for leaving home and vice versa. And this was my personal fight. All in all, I am very confident that other women will come after me, as was the case in my previous positions.
Yeah, it's a very inspiring story, and it's nice to hear your honest view on what the experience has been. Um, for those who are listening, maybe in the audience, what advice can you share with us for women specifically starting their careers in the financial industry, but maybe also the men who are starting their careers and going through the ranks?
Yes, I have worked in different organizations, both public and private, made up people with different interests and points of view. In these places, most of which with a low presence of women, as I said, I have sought to create spaces for communication, to exchange opinions, and work together for a common goal. The point is the common goal. I don't like to give advice because everyone has their own realities. But an important issue to me is to seek personal balance at each stage of life. There are moments and moments, and we may enjoy all of them. It is about being able to develop our abilities, and this is not possible if we do not achieve our own internal balance and we are guided by our preference and motivations. Once we achieve that, we can walk with determination and without complexes. I have told this to my daughter. Whatever makes you happy, do it. You can do it. Don't put the brakes on yourself. Don't let others tell you what you can't do. Only do it. And second, let's not give up our essence. When something is truly worthwhile, we should not give up because of the obstacles or barriers that make the road uphill. This is true for everybody. I invite women and men to embrace every opportunity and grab it, get inspired by it, and visualize being right where your goal is. Sometimes achieving a goal can take time. It may even imply changing plans and redesigning objectives. So I urge women to be patient and perseverant, but also to always find a space for a feel of joy and fulfillment in every step that leads them there. It is our attitude to face challenges that leads us to successfully overcome obstacles and to be delighted day by day by what we do. Cultural changes are slow, involve us as responsible for our cultural heritage. Regarding this, I wonder if there is bias in economic schools, in the way we teach economics, or in the message we deliver, given that there are very few women teaching economics and finance.
Yeah. No, that's it. I know you said you didn't like giving advice, but that personally to me felt like great advice that will surely inspire all of us listening and definitely has been something I'll keep in mind as well. That brings me to the end of my questions, and I wanted to ask if you had any final remarks for those who might be listening as to what's the most important thing to keep in mind going forward.
Let me conclude with this reflection.
Mhm.
Whether or not a person wants to be in the working world and in one profession or another, he or she should be free to do what they really want to do. Do not be affected by what the environment imposes on you. There is no such thing as a type of career only for women or only for men. It is not a matter of imposing things, but of clearing the past and freeing it from biases and prejudices, and letting each individual reach his or her maximum fulfillment. We have to work together for a common goal.
Yeah. Thank you. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us and giving your insights on this topic. Thank you also to our listeners. You can read the 2024 Gender Balance Index report and other content on diversity and inclusion on our website. Thank you.
Thank you, Arunima.
Thank you.